It's NFC Championship game week, baby. Get hyped. Let's go. Yo, what's going on, everybody? This is Sammy J Reacts. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be previewing the matchup between the San Francisco 49ers and the Philadelphia Eagles, just from a statistical perspective, and I'm going to be sprinkling in some key matchups and some of my opinions about the game. So without further ado, let's get into it. But before we get into it, if you are a fan of the San Francisco 49ers and the NFL in general, I want to ask if you could please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you feel my vibe, and hit that bell notification button to never miss one on upload so we can continue talking about what we love to watch. And that means 49er football, baby. And man, are we as NFL fans lucky to be witnessing this game. I'm telling you, the 49ers versus the Eagles in this NFC Championship game is going to be something different. These are the two best teams in the league, in my opinion, and I think whoever wins this game is going to win the Super Bowl. It's the San Francisco 49ers, led by Kyle Shanahan's offense, with a rookie 7th round last pick in the draft, and Brock Purdy and all of those offensive weapons. George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, Trent Williams, Aaron Banks, Juwan Jennings, Ray McLeod. Need I say more? Along with that defense, the #1 rated defense in the league, led by D'Amico Ryans, touting an all-pro at every level, with the Defensive Player of the Year Nick Bosa, all-pro Fred Warner, and all-pro Talanoa Hufanga. And don't forget about Dre Greenlaw, Azeez Al-Shaair, Eric Armstead, Jimmy Ward, Mooney Ward, Diamador Lenore. Everyone on this defense is ready. That's why they're the hottest team in the NFL, coming into this game riding a 12-game winning streak, going into Philadelphia at Lincoln Financial Field to face the #1 seed Philadelphia Eagles, coming off of a rout of the New York Giants 38-7. This is going to be the second time that the Eagles and the 49ers play each other in the playoffs. This is going to be Philadelphia's 8th trip to the NFC Championship game since the Super Bowl era, and the Niners' 18th. And one of the biggest matchups, in my opinion, is going to be the 49ers' #1 rated run defense against Philadelphia's run offense. This is a completely different beast that the 49ers have faced, but also Philadelphia hasn't faced a defense like this either. So it's literally going to be iron sharpening iron. Philadelphia, in my opinion, touts the best offensive line in football, but it's what Jalen Hurts is able to do in the run game that could cause the 49ers fits. Now, not necessarily the quarterback designed runs, but what he's able to do scrambling. There's a reason Jalen Hurts' name was in the MVP conversation earlier in the season, and that's because in 2022, Jalen Hurts had 760 rushing yards at a 4.6 yard per carry clip, and he averaged almost 60 yards per game, which is insane. And he had a quiet game for his standards in the divisional matchup against the Giants, where he only rushed 9 times for 34 yards, but he did score a crucial touchdown. So obviously, that's going to be one of the biggest keys for the 49ers defense, is how they limit Jalen Hurts and just the entire Philadelphia run game in general, because they were a top 5 rushing unit. They're going to have to play extremely disciplined, stay true to their rush lanes, keep contained, be gap sound, and they're going to have a spy up at all times, in my opinion. There's really no secret to what Philly wants to do. They were 3rd in the NFL in rushing attempts, and they were 23rd in pass attempts. Very similar to the 49ers, actually. But they also have a stable of running backs that you need to be extremely careful of, led by Miles Sanders. But last week, Kenneth Gainwell had himself a game. He had 112 yards at a 9.3 yard per carry clip, and he scored a touchdown. And even Miles Sanders himself had 17 carries for 90 yards, which is 5.3 yards per carry. That's just crazy run dominance. But you also can't forget about the little guy, Boston Scott, who also had 32 yards at a 5.3 yard per carry clip, and he also scored a touchdown. So they have weapons in the run game everywhere. Now, it may sound like a daunting task to try to limit that run game, but guess what? The 49ers run defense held running backs to 3.3 yards per carry, which was 1st in the NFL, and they had the #1 defense in general, and they didn't allow a 100-yard rushing game to anyone. Any one singular player, that is. They even did a great job in last week's game against the Cowboys, who we know likes to establish the run game. They only allowed 76 yards on 22 carries, which is a 3.5 yard per carry clip. So I think the 49ers will do a pretty decent job at stopping the running backs. Now, back to what everyone likes to say the 49ers struggle with. It's the running quarterbacks. We obviously saw what Justin Fields did in week 1, but that one was kind of a wash because it was in a freaking monsoon. But another game that the 49ers played against a mobile quarterback, where the quarterback is heavily involved in the run game, was the Atlanta Falcons, and we all kind of know what happened there. But to be fair, the 49ers did not have Nick Bosa in that game, and they were missing 11 starters in total. So while, yeah, the 49ers struggled to stop Marcus Mariota on that specific day, it doesn't help when you don't have your first team unanimous All-Pro, most likely Defensive Player of the Year, Nick Bosa, who led the NFL in sacks with 18.5. Not to mention the various other starters on the defensive line and the secondary that didn't play in that game. So that's a small sample size that you can't really take into account for this upcoming game. Now, a sample size we do have is the fact that these two teams played each other last year. Now, while granted both teams are vastly different, we do have something that we can work off of with the fact that Nick Bosa had 2 sacks against Jordan Mailata, so he's probably going to be lining up against him a lot. And while Mailata is very good, don't get me wrong, he's probably the weakest link on that offensive line. Not a weak link, he's a good player, but that's the side you probably want to attack, because this offensive line in general, Jason Kelce, Lane Johnson, they're scary. And in fact, Lane Johnson didn't give up a single sack in 2022. I think that's pretty good. Whereas Jordan Mailata gave up 6. So that already tells you where the 49ers are going to attack. But that's really all we can take from last year's game, as Jalen Hurts just took another level to his game. Like I mentioned, he was in the MVP race. Now, he was coming off an injury in the divisional round, but he still had a pretty damn good game. He was 16 of 24 for 154 yards, threw 2 touchdowns for a 112 rating. His shoulder looked damn good to me. And it helps when you have a receiving core with players like Dallas Goedert, who was targeted 5 times last week, caught all 5 for 58 yards and a touchdown. A player like Biletnikoff winner Devontae Smith, who in last week's game had 6 catches, 61 yards, and a touchdown. And in 2022, he actually had 95 receptions, 1,196 yards, and 7 touchdowns. But the biggest weapon they have, figuratively and literally, was A.J. Brown. He was their leading receiver this year. He had 88 catches, 1,496 yards, and 11 touchdowns. He is coming off of a quiet divisional round where he only caught 3 catches for 22 yards, but we all know what A.J. Brown does. And if we've seen anything from these 2 playoff games from the 49ers defense, is that the number 1 wide receiver for the opposing team is going to eat no matter who's guarding him. We saw it with DK Metcalf, and we saw it last week with CeeDee Lamb. They both had exceptional, phenomenal games, but that's really DeMeco Ryans' plan. Like, he's not going to sell out to try to stop one guy. It's really about just playing disciplined football and making sure the others don't eat on top of that. Having said that, I do expect Philly to try to move around A.J. Brown to get him matched up on Diamador Lenore as opposed to Charvarius Ward, especially with him coming off of a quiet game. Now, while that's fine that the number 1 wide receiver can go ahead and eat, the 49ers pass defense isn't nothing to mess around with. Even last week when CeeDee Lamb was going crazy, they held Dak Prescott to a 63.6 passer rating, and they picked him off twice. And look, you can try to test Diamador Lenore, but he is a ball hawk. He's coming off of back-to-back weeks with an interception, and he's starting to gain that confidence, like I've been saying in previous videos. But it's no secret that Mooney Ward, Charvarius Ward, was the 49ers' best corner in 2022. He held opposing quarterbacks to a 79.3 rating, and he also had 11 passes defensed, and he's normally tasked with handling the number 1 wide receiver on opposing offenses. Now, I don't expect that they're going to match Mooney Ward against A.J. Brown, but if he starts having a crazy game, they might have to do that. But I do expect the 49ers to go extremely zone heavy, as they like to play a lot of quarters coverage and also man coverage when they blitz, so hopefully they kind of limit the blitzing and the man coverage because they could get burned a lot. Now, the 49ers can and probably should be blitzing Jalen Hurts in this game because he had a quarterback rating of 65.2 when he was blitzed, which was actually 20th in the league, so that is some food for thought there. But they're going to have to be careful because when they blitz, they're going to have to stay gap disciplined, keep contained, and ensure that Jalen Hurts cannot step up in the pocket through the pressure and pick up first downs with his legs. Now, another thing to note with this 49ers pass defense was that in 2022, they allowed a 98.2 rating to tight ends, and last week, Dalton Schultz scored a touchdown. But to be honest, I feel like this is kind of a misleading stat because even in the game last week, Dalton Schultz was targeted 10 times, only caught 5 catches for 27 yards, so they held him in check. But that's going to be a part of this whole making sure the others don't eat. And during this 12-game winning streak, the 49ers defense has held opponents under 24 points 11 out of the 12 games. Now, while normally this is a good thing, last week was the first time the 49ers defense had to put the offense on its back because that was Brock Purdy's first start with no touchdown and under a 90 rating, which is kind of crazy to think, but he didn't play as bad as a lot of people are trying to make it out to be. I thought he played pretty well, especially considering the defense he was playing and the pressure. He was like the literal pressure of the game, but also the defensive linemen that were chasing after him. But if you ask me, coming off a game where you were 19 of 29 for 214 yards and an 87.4 rating, and you didn't turn the ball over, and you threw the ball away when you needed to, and you didn't take sacks, keeping you behind the sticks, I think you had a pretty damn good game. But if we're going to keep it a buck, the 49ers offense is always going to flow through that running game. And in 2022, they were 9th in the NFL in rushing attempts and 26th in pass attempts. And CMC just keeps doing what he does all year. In the divisional round, he had 35 yards rushing, only at 3.5 yard per carry clip, but he did score the crucial game-winning touchdown. And I expect this game against the Eagles to be no different and feature a heavy dose of not only CMC, but Elijah Mitchell as well. They're a great 1-2 punch, and if there's anywhere that Philadelphia can be had, it's in their run defense. Even in last week's game against the New York Giants, Saquon Barkley had a 61-yard rushing game on a 7-yard per carry clip. And on top of that, they allowed 5.8 yards per carry to familiar friend Matt Breida. And overall in 2022, Philadelphia's run defense was allowing 4.6 yards per carry. So I think crucially, the 49ers need to establish that run game early and often and play with the lead. If they find themselves behind multiple scores, it's going to be really tough against this Philadelphia defense because that's when they are truly special on the defensive line. because their pass rush is incredible. They were second in the NFL with a 33.3% pressure rate, and that was with only sending a blitz 27% of the time. So they're doing it with just that front four. It is scary. I mean, from Sweat, Hargrave, Cox, Hassan Reddick. Even last week against the Giants, they had 5 sacks and 8 total quarterback hits. They are a dominant pass rushing team. And nothing tells you how dominant their pass rush was in 2022 than this stat here. They had 70 sacks, which was 15 more than second place. They obviously led the NFL. That's crazy. They had 5 players with 7 or more sacks. It's insane. And you better believe that the Eagles are going to try to find the matchup between Hassan Reddick and Mike McGlinchey, because Hassan Reddick had 16 sacks on the year and Mike McGlinchey has been struggling. But I do think it's important to note that while they might be getting a lot of pressure, Brock Purdy's done a pretty good job, even in the games where he's taken a bunch of sacks. Like, I think in week 18 he took 4 sacks. He had a 141.2 rating against that pass rush. So even if they're able to get home to the whirling dervish Brock Purdy, where he's going to spin, roll out left, spin 4 times and then throw the ball away, it's going to be tough against them. Now we get to Philly's secondary, which was #1 in the league. Their pass defense was incredible. They only allowed 180 yards per game, which was obviously first in the NFL, and they only allowed 6.4 yards per attempt, which was actually tied for second, but still elite, dominant pass defense. I mean, when you got players like James Bradbury, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, big play Slay, Darius Slay Jr., they're going to have elite, dominant performing games like they did last week against the Giants, where they held Daniel Jones to only 135 yards, 5 yards per attempt, and they picked him off. Crazy. And in 2022, they only allowed an 81.6 rating, which was 3rd in the NFL, and they had 17 interceptions, which was actually tied for 4th. 49ers actually had more with 20, but just thought I'd throw that nugget in there. Now, it's obviously extremely important to note that the 49ers pass offense was pretty damn great and efficient in 2022. They actually were 2nd in the NFL with a 102.3 passer rating, and they were 5th in the NFL at 12 yards per catch, which is insane. That's a first down every single time your receiver catches the ball. And I expect this game against the Eagles to be a huge Deebo Samuel game. He's actually been pretty quiet. He's been held under 60 receiving yards in 8 of his last 9 games, so I'm expecting him to go to Deebo. I'm expecting him to go to Brandon Ayuk, the #1 wide receiver in this offense, early and often. Obviously, I think George Kittle is going to be George Kittle, and that's actually going to be the matchup that you really want to target this week, is going to be that play-action passing game to the tight end against Philadelphia's linebackers. I mean, when George Kittle is coming off a game with 5 catches and 95 yards, you're going to keep feeding him, right? That's a maybe, because Philadelphia's pass defense actually held tight ends to an 80.6 rating, which was 5th in the entire NFL. So it might be tough sledding. So I think overall, the game plan for the 49ers is going to be establish that run game, attack Philly's defense where it's weakest, in the run game. It's pretty simple, honestly. Football is a simple sport at the end of the day. If you execute well, if you are able to play disciplined, sound defensive football, you're going to win most of your games. It's going to be a very tough matchup. I can't wait to see it. Philadelphia is legit. The 49ers are legit. And boy, oh boy, are we in for a freaking hell of a game, man. I can't wait. But that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for more future videos. If you liked this video, like the video. If you felt my vibe, I hope you subscribed. But before I get out of here, I'm going to leave you with a bang, bang, Niner gang. Yay! Peace, love, and positivity, everybody. Peace.